Okay, picking up where we left off, I believe the only thing I did in between videos is I just deleted the um, preference folder. I don't think I deleted at the end of the previous video, and all that had was the prefab I had worked on prior to recording, just as a reference in case I wasn't able to replicate the particle system to my liking. And the other thing that you're going to want to check, make sure that for your burst object that looping is off. Duration should not exceed the lifetime. We have that set to 1 second each. And for the smoke, I made one minor tweak, and that is whereas the burst object, the objects start bigger, the images start bigger and get smaller. For the smoke, I did just the opposite, where click on this, you can see it starts smaller and gets larger, but you should think of smoke increasing as a fire burns, as it billowing out. And again, this is pure aesthetics. You don't have to make that change functionally. It doesn't do anything. So let's go ahead and turn that into a prefab just by dragging and dropping it. Let's delete it there. And now what we need to do is we need to make our GM object aware of our new burst object. So let's go into our Game Master script. We already have a key code declared for the new script, for the new skill, excuse me. And then we're going to do public transform, and this time it's the burst object. Save that. And now it's there. Just go to prefab, drag and drop that. So now the GM object is aware of it. And now we're just going to copy this and make a couple changes. First, it needs to be skill number 2, so that's the key it's checking for. Second, it needs to be the new burst object. And lastly, it needs to be the burst object rotation. And that should be enough to do it. No errors. And let's go ahead and click on the number 2 key. And there it is. So one error, and that is the prefab for the smoke. So you can just expand it out here. Smoke ring. I forgot to get rid of the looping for the smoke ring. So let's just run that one more time. Okay, and that also illustrates that once you've created a prefab, you can continue to make changes to it. It's a little bit harder because it's no longer in the environment, so you can't really see what you're doing, but you certainly can make all the changes that you would normally make. You can still add other components to this, which we will do. So let's go ahead and add a melee attack, and that will be the last attack that we add for now. Then we'll get into other aspects such as spawning enemies and attacking the enemies and that kind of thing. So go to your folder where you have your images, and we're going to bring in a couple. We're going to bring in the swords, the scythe slash for the melee attack, and we need to bring in a new image of her not holding the scythe, because the default image right now is holding the scythe. So if the scythe is being slashed, then we need to remove it from her hands. So we've brought those in. Now what we need to do is at this point she has been displaying this default image, but if we need to toggle back and forth between images, we need to attach a variable to that so we can address it with the script. So let's actually, we don't have to add a new script, we can just use the one that's there already, and we'll create a couple variables. It'll be public sprite, and it will be called idle stance. That's the one that we've been using right along. public sprite / stance, just in case we come up with other attack stances. Save that. It'll appear over here. So idle is the one we've been using right along. / stance is the one without the scythe. Now let's go ahead and create the scythe object by dragging it over here. We'll call it, let's actually add a rigid, let's add a box collider. Let's just move it up on the screen a bit so you can see it. And don't have to worry about too much about the details, but we do want to extend this out to cover the range in which the scythe will be slashing. And that should do it for now. And we'll get more into the details of the box collider when we get into the actual combat. So now let's add a script to the scythe. Let's call it scythe control. What we're going to do is we're going to determine how long that is going to be on the screen. Now, to coordinate the appearance of this and the changing of her to the image without the scythe, we're going to have to create a new variable. So let's go out to Game Master, and we're going to do a couple things. First, let's create a variable for the scythe object, which we're not going to attach yet since we haven't finalized it, although you can still make changes even after you attach it. And we're going to add a new public static variable. That way the variable is accessible in any script on any object in any scene. And this will just track whether or not slashing is occurring. And by default, we'll set it to no. And you'll see why we need that in just a minute. Oh, sorry, I didn't say what type this is. Public static string. Save that. Okay. So now we'll turn this into a prefab by dragging and dropping it into our asset area. We'll delete the original. We'll go to the GM. It is now aware of the scythe object. And we need to now go to here and check to see if skill 3 has been activated. So skill 3, the object is scythe object. Why isn't it acknowledging that? Oh, because I misspelled scythe. Okay, so scythe object, scythe rotation. Now current center is going to cause a problem, because what happens is every object has a pivot point. That pivot determines where the origin of the object is. So when you set coordinates, it is using the pivot point. So if you go out, not so much the object level, but if you go to the image, the asset level, you'll see that by default it's the center. Well, when she swings the scythe, we're actually going to want it up and to the right. So if we move the pivot point to the bottom left, then that should by default, when we set the coordinates, it's going to push it up and to the right. That way we can keep using this, the current center, without trying to calculate something off to the side. We just move the pivot point. So we've got this skill being detected. It's instantiating the object. That's the object there. So what we also want to do is have that new variable be set to yes. So game master dot slashing is now equal to yes. That way, that value can be transferred across objects in this script. So now what we do is for our scythe slash, for our scythe slash object, we've got scythe control, which we don't have open yet because we've done nothing with it. Scythe control is going to do a couple things. It's going to look to see how long it's been instantiated, and then it will be destroyed. So I'm going to put in a timer. Actually, sorry. It's going to be a variable that will track time. So public float, and we'll call it total time, and we'll set it to 0. And then what we do in here, in the update section, we do total time is increased by time dot delta time. Don't know if we've looked at that yet in this video series. This basically says that whenever this command is come across, how much time has passed. This is saying, okay, take that amount and make a cumulative total. So that's all this is saying. This is just saying whenever this is executed, how much time has changed. And now we just say if total time is greater than whatever amount of time you want the weapon to be on the screen, we'll say 1/3 of a second, then two things need to happen. First, we need to destroy this object. So destroy game object just says whatever object the script is attached to, destroy it. Second thing is that new variable we added, game master dot slashing, gets set back to no. And the reason for that is now the hero can now make a change based on that. So we added the two stances, and what we need to do is we check that new variable. So if game master dot slashing equals yes, then get component, sprite renderer, sprite needs to be set to slash stance, else set it to idle stance. That should do it. So I'm going to press the number 3 key. Actually, forgot to put our new prefab there. There we go.